the Jaipur bookmark reflects the core values of the publishing industry, and it brings together some of the greatest publishing professionals from around the world.
जयपुर बुकमार्क एक ऐसा प्लेटफॉर्म है जहाँ पे कि बिजनेस को समझने का एक अपॉर्चुनिटी मिलता है. सो आई थिंक JBM इज समथिंग विच इज़ फैंटास्टिक एंड पीपल हु डोंट नो अबाउट इट, उनको आना चाहिए, उनको इसका हिस्सा बनना चाहिए.
Jaipur BookMark. Come and celebrate literature, meet authors, agents, publishers. Join us at the Jaipur BookMark.
On behalf of Jaipur BookMark, Festival Advisors, Aditi Maheshwari Goyal, Namita Gokhale, Naveen Kishore, Neeta Gupta and Urvashi Batalia, Festival Producer Sanjoy K. Roy and all my colleagues at Team Vakats, we welcome you to the 8th edition of the Jaipur BookMark. The Indian publishing industry has grown rapidly with the world's attention converging on it. Creating a meaningful B2B platform for publishers was thus essential, and the Jaipur BookMark was conceived to run parallel to the Jaipur Literature Festival. In the 7 years since its inception, JBM has fast emerged as a nerve center for the South Asian publishing industry and is indeed a focal point where books mean business. In 2020, the world grappled with the pandemic and businesses learned to reinvent themselves and adapt to an entirely new digital idiom. JBM 2021 is being held as a virtual event and as always continues to bring together all stakeholders of the business of books over meaningful discussions and far-reaching resolutions. A warm welcome to all at the virtual JBM 2021. Publishing Market International Exchange. Claudia KAISER, Lucy Luck, PHAEDON KIDONIATIS, RENATE PUNKA, SELJA AHAVA and URPU STRELLMAN in conversation with PREETI GILL. Organized by Cultural Relations Platform CRP and EU-funded project in collaboration with Jaipur BookMark. The wide-ranging group of professionals and experts on this panel will present a broad scope of the publishing market from each of their perspectives, expertise and geographies. What does the international exchange mean in the world of books? How do book fairs and publisher associations work? Which books travel and why? The panel will seek some insightful answers to these questions while presenting a bird's eye view of the publishing market landscape. Claudia KAISER was trained as a bookseller, has an MA in Chinese Studies and was the editor for the China Foreign Literature Publishing House. In 1998, she set up the German Book Information Center by Frankfurter Buchmesse in Beijing and was its first director. She later moved on to the United Nations Publishing in New York and has been in the senior management of the Frankfurt Book Fair since 2003. As Vice President, Business Development, Frankfurt Book Fair, she presently looks into the South Asian markets and South Asia, Arab world and Africa. Lucy Luck is an agent of literary fiction and non-fiction at C&W Agency. She joined in 2016, having previously worked at Rogers Coleridge and White, Lucy Luck Associates, which she has founded in 2006, and Atkin Alexander Associates. Her authors include Douglas Stewart, Colin Barrett, Kevin Barry, Sarah Baum, Roddy Doyle, Wendy Erskine, Zoe Gilbert, Ellie Williams and Andrew Michael Hurley. PHAEDON KIDONIATIS is the founder of 2 publishing houses and currently manages 6 imprints and 7 academic journals. He is also an active shareholder in 2 other companies involved in the creative industry. He has taught economics for many years and also works as a consultant. RENATE PUNKA wears 3 hats in her professional life. She is managing director of Janus Rose Publishers, one of the oldest and most respectable publishing houses, the home of many established and aspiring writers from Latvia and mostly from abroad. Since 2012, RENATE has been repeatedly elected as the president of the Latvian Publishers Association, LPA. In this role, she actively engages in debates about cultural policy of Latvia and lobbies for the interest of the book sector. She is also a representative of the LPA to the Federation of European Publishers, FEP. SELJA AHAVA is a fiction author and scriptwriter. She has published 4 novels. Her novel, Things That Fall from the Sky, won the European Union Prize for Literature in 2016, and its translation rights have been sold to 24 countries. Her latest novel, The Woman Who Loved Insects, came out last year. URPU STRELLMAN is a literary agent and CEO at Helsinki Literary Agency. The agency represents well over 100 Finnish authors of all genres, fiction, non-fiction, and children's titles. Previously, she worked as an editor and a publishing manager. PREETI GILL is an independent literary agent who has more than 20 years of experience in the publishing industry as a commissioning editor and rights director. She is the editor of the Peripheral Center, Voices from India's Northeast, as well as Bearing Witness, a report on the impact of conflict on women in Nagaland and Assam. Her writing has appeared in numerous journals and anthologies. Her documentary, Rambuai, Mizoram's Trouble Years, co-produced with Sanjoy Hazarika, was released in September 2016 and has edited She Stoops to Kill, an anthology of murder stories by women. In Amritsar, she set up a literary and cultural hub, the first of its kind, called Majha House. Ladies and gentlemen, we present to you Publishing Market International Exchange. Preeti, over to you.
Good evening and hello. Welcome especially to all the speakers who are here today for this panel and for a discussion which I'm sure going to be really interesting and engaging, because it seems to go to the very heart of the book trade and the activity of making books. We're going to be discussing the publishing market and international exchange and how books travel. And what actually helps these books to travel from one language to another, one culture to another, and helps different people to take a look into other cultures and thereby create bridges of understanding and information, knowledge, empathy, etc., so that you learn about new spaces and new people, stuff that you probably didn't know earlier. Our speakers this evening, as you've just heard, inhabit very different spheres of this literary spectrum, and each of them is going to bring to us their very own years and years of experience and also their perspectives as they weigh in on the questions, on some of the questions that we're going to be asking. Mainly about how to grow the market for books, how to sell rights, what are the challenges, especially for smaller language groups, and also to be looking at that special, unique feature that makes a book become an international success. What is it that really propels this? How does the book find its reader? I'd like to actually begin with you, Claudia, because as Vice President, Business Development of the Frankfurt Book Fair, which is the biggest and oldest book fair, and also sells rights, and it's a business place for selling rights. And you look after Southeast Asia, South Asia, the Arab world, and Africa, all very disparate markets. Would you be able to just sort of take us through that very briefly, the kind of things that, you know, how the Frankfurt Book Fair is actually going about, how it strategizes the developing of these disparate markets, and also perhaps what it's like to work, especially when you're working with a smaller language group, and how you try and propel that into the international market. I know we have very little time, so I'm going to throw out a bunch of questions, and I would like you to just take them on board, and hopefully our audience will get enough information about these various spheres that you come from. Claudia.
Okay, so thank you very much to the organizers of Jaipur BookMark, and thank you, Preeti, for having me on this panel, and it's a pleasure to get to know all the fellow speakers. Yeah, so Frankfurt Book Fair, as you probably know, it covers a span of 500 years. So it's an old book fair, it's an old lady. It's the biggest meeting place for publishers worldwide, with about 7,000 exhibitors from, it's like the United Nations of Publishing, from 100 something countries and 300,000 visitors. And at the nucleus of the book fair is really people meeting up, agents meeting up, publishers meeting up, and creating trading rights. That's the nucleus of the book fair. And I'm sure most of you have been there, so you will know that. But apart from that, we also, Frankfurt Book Fair is a very unique organization. I don't think there's anything else like it in the world. So the book fair belongs to the Publishers and Booksellers Association of Germany. And Frankfurt Book Fair is not just this meeting place once a year, but our task is also to bring the world together in other places, everywhere in the world where we can go. So we have offices in China, in Delhi, in Moscow, and in New York. And we organize conferences, we are co-organizers of book fairs sometimes. And we also, another task is to promote German books, because German, even though it seems like a big language, is also one of the lesser known languages in many ways. And for us, it's also not easy to find a lot of publishers worldwide to translate German literature. So we are supporting the publishers from Germany, in that we organize stands at about 20 odd book fairs worldwide. And of course, nowadays we do it all virtually, just like Jaipur, just like last year's Frankfurt Book Fair. So in this way, growing markets for books, we grow, or we try to grow markets for the rights and the exchange of rights. And we also grow markets for the German publishers, to let German books travel more. In this pandemic age, we also have on offer a big rights platform, which is called Frankfurt Rights, used to be called IPR License earlier. And on this platform, everyone can post their titles, upload their titles, make them visible, and others can search for them. So that is also a good opportunity to create more visibility. Of course, more is needed for that, as much more is needed to make books travel. And the big network of agents is extremely important, but also something like the translation funding by governments. You probably know Frankfurt Book Fair also features a guest of honor each year, if it happens in a physical format. And India was, for instance, the first country which was a guest of honor twice. And that is a beautiful and really useful opportunity to showcase the literature of a country. And it would be, or it is very, very recommendable to back it up by translation funding. India also had a catalog, I remember, I think it was called Indian Literature Abroad, and it tried to bring more Indian authors to an international publishing community, and the catalog was created, and I think that was extremely useful. But unfortunately, that's not happening at this moment. So yeah, so those are some of the things that I think are essential to make books travel from smaller language, or lesser known languages, let's put it like that.
If I can just quickly slip in two more questions. One is, of course, I just read about the closing of the Delhi office.
Yeah.
And, secondly, what are the kind of challenges you would face, especially when we're looking at South Asia, when we're looking at India, since we are located here right now?
You mean for to get into the market, right, for Indian public? Okay, yeah. So as I said, I said we had an office in Delhi, and we have to close it for the moment, but we're still going to be active there in the region. We're still going to be active in India, even if it's from Frankfurt. So basically what I think the challenge is, for, as I said earlier, try to get more visibility for Indian titles. I think this is a really good time for Western publishers to pick up authors from Asia, and also India, of course. And I think that should be used. So the challenge is obviously to get more visibility. And that can be done by creating those catalogs, by translation funding, by having a bigger stand at the Frankfurt Book Fair to make Indian authors more being recognized. And I think that there's a lot to be done there. Unfortunately, we don't see so much at the time being and for the past few years in Frankfurt, but it's more individual publishers and no translation funding program. And as I said, something like Indian literature abroad is not happening anymore.
Right. Thanks, Claudia. If we could go to Renate now. She's a publisher and also the president of the Latvian Publishers Association. And you also represent the federation. You represent the Latvians in the Federation of European Publishers. So if you could also talk about the specific challenges that you face as you represent a smaller language in the European market. Also that what according to you is the role of all of these different institutions, if you will call them that, that seem to be essential to the selling of rights in the foreign markets. So like we have, the Frankfurt Book Fair, we have other book fairs, we have prizes, awards, we have translation support that Claudia also mentioned. And the other thing that I would like you also to briefly talk about is the EU Literature Prize, because you're heavily involved with that as well. So it was, I was looking at the list of some of the prize winners and how the whole thing comes together. So every language, and you only have a few languages every year. So if you talk a little bit about that as well.
Okay, I will try to squeeze as much as possible in these 5 minutes that we each have. So, of course, being a lesser known language, it is a challenge to sell our writers abroad, but Claudia is very right about possibilities given to the guest of honor countries. And for instance, Latvia was together with Estonia and Lithuania a market-focused country in a London book fair a couple of years ago. And it was an extremely good push for our experience and our visibility in international markets, and also it proved to our government that really the support for translations and support for foreign publishers to choose a quite risky project, actually, to take unknown author from even less known country and to promote it. And so now we have established a regular funding for this. And as a publisher, on the other hand, of course, I am using these funds provided by the other countries. And honestly, it's really a good help that this funding system exists. And it's good that in Europe, there is also a network of these funding organizations that try to reach out to the publishers and to share this information, what's available and how they can help. At the moment, there is also the project and research going on how this could be developed even more. And so I think the main thing is cooperation, and information sharing. And on the other hand, of course, for the authors and for the publishers who really took the risk, and because the books in translation is costlier than the books publications by local authors, and it's not so easy to market them. Hence, the literary festivals like yours is also of very crucial importance to make these books travel. And what is a unique project you already mentioned? This is this European Union Literature Prize, which was established in 2009. Just in order to make these chances of exchange and chances of visibility for all countries in Europe more equal. And the system is that it's a 3-year circle. The competition, or so-called this project, is run by three governing bodies. This is a European Writers' Council, European Federation of Publishers, and European Federation of Booksellers. And seed money for this project comes from the European Commission. And so there are these local juries in each country which selects the book which is recognized as a winner from the shortlist. There are rather strict regulations because this prize is really not given to just a splendid author from the particular country, but it is given to the aspiring new star. We can expect to write, to spread the literature of the country for years and years to come. So the winner should publish between 2 and 4 books to qualify for this shortlist. And for smaller countries, and this book should be published rather recently. And SELJA AHAVA, who is a winner from Finland, might tell you more in detail about her experience. But I have published several authors from various countries, and it really helps. It helps to bring the authors to your own market, and it's quite interesting. It gives also the overview of all the versatility of this European book market. And to be honest, also as equality and inclusion is quite a topic nowadays, then we found out that actually also the prize winners are in a quite good balance, because female versus male winnership is rather 50-50. So it's an amazing project, and I could talk about rather at length, but yeah, I think my time is running out. So
yeah, it's unfortunate that we really needed a lot more time. So anyway, from what you said, I just want to ask you 2 more things. One is, of course, because you're also a translator yourself, and so the criticality and importance of translation, of course, but also, when you're going to be reading a book from another culture altogether, perhaps by a writer that you don't know at all, create a culture around the book or the author before it's going to get noticed, or before it even becomes an international seller?
Well, translator is a key issue, of course, because to bring the author into the market, you have to have a translator first of all, and this for lesser known languages, this is quite an issue, because of course we prefer the direct translations without relay translations, but sometimes also for translations from Latvian language, we have to allow translators translate from English or from German, because these are more widespread languages, and that could help the literature travel. But ideally, of course, it's not the case. And so another task actually for the countries that really takes care about the translation is also the education of translators, and then encouraging these translators to be interested in the languages. And honestly, some of my translators that work, for instance, from Finnish or from Estonian, they are like an ambassadors of these literatures into the Latvia, and they help a lot, and then they work as a marketers, as a persuaders, both for the authors and afterwards for the translations they've done. And I think it's quite important to see if the book is relevant for the audience. But on the other hand, of course, the translation widens your horizon, and I think that it gives you the taste of different corners of the world. And so I think that's very important, not to be afraid from the strangers. That's the thing that And on the other hand, of course, it helps you to see also how similar we are in all the corners of the world. So I think it's amazing, and I wish we would really see more and more books translated and traveling around, because it enriches our view to the world enormously.
Yeah, I completely agree with you there. Maybe we should get in SELJA AHAVA now, since you've mentioned her book as well. Maybe she can join our discussion, and she's one of the most internationally successful authors from Finland, and her novel Things That Fall from the Sky won the prize for literature in 2016, and it sold rights in some 24 territories. Celia, if you could tell us, what did the prize do for you?
Thank you. Yes, it has really changed my work and how I locate, to be able to become, to work internationally has been for me quite, it's felt really good, because I have lived internationally, and I've so to be, and then because my work is so connected with Finnish language, which again is very small language, to have this opportunity to actually link my life that is not limited to Finland and my work that is very limited with Finnish language has been wonderful, and has felt like this is how it should be. And it is thanks to the prize very much that this has been possible. Yes, Things That Fall from the Sky has been translated to 20, I think it has now been sold to 25 areas. And first it was European languages, and then gradually, once you pass a certain threshold of, say, 15 translations or so, then countries from outside Europe, like China and Arabic language and Armenia and some special places like that, get interested. So, and then of course, what is also for a writer, the EU prize is wonderful also because you make contacts with other writers. And that has been really interesting, because the realities where you write and how you support yourself financially and all this is of course really different even within Europe. So to change experiences and life realities has been really eye-opening. And then of course the prize, because EU Prize for Literature also sends its authors to the book fairs outside of Europe. So I have presented the award in New Delhi Book Fair and Hong Kong Book Fair. Then the English translation of the book has, of course, then offered some other opportunities as well in Asia.
Yeah. And what, in your opinion, because of course you're in Finland and it's a small country with a small population, language which is probably not read by too many and spoken by too many, and what makes the literature from there so unique? So what do you bring to the world market that maybe others don't have?
This is an interesting question, that what is relevant within one country and then what is relevant internationally, and they don't always contact, maybe they don't often connect. So the books that might be interesting and relevant in Finnish context are not necessarily the ones that travel, and vice versa. And I think in my case, because I don't see the book as being particularly Finnish, because I'm not, again, it relates to the fact that how I define my identity and where I feel like I'm at home and what is local and what's not local to me. So it's not so bound to Finnish borders. So that reflects in my books as well. But then also because the book kind of deals with quite a common idea of chance and unreliability and so kind of basic structures of life. And I think there are ideas that we share across the borders. Although, then again, it's been really interesting to talk with the Chinese translator, for instance, because in Chinese culture, the concept of chance is very, very different from ours. So again, I learned something from that discussion that all ideas, really, are not the same. We don't share, and that's
keeps expanding. I guess,
So that is something that I am interested in literature in general as well. That it takes me to somewhere that I didn't know already. I think it is one of its its purposes, that if we just read what we already know and we get the confirmation from that, it's very shallow way of regarding literature.
Yeah. So maybe now we should move to the voice of an agent. I think URPU is not here with us today, so it has to be Lucy who has to then tell us all about what excites an agent. And every agent, I guess, wants to find that something, that comes into your inbox or that you read, which stops you completely, makes you, astonishes you, and you want to go further with that writer. And so personally for yourself, what is it that you look out for when you receive submissions, and what particular thing catches your attention? What are the kind of books or the kind of writing that appeals to you right away, and that you would say, oh, wow, this is what, this is the thing I want on my list. Other than that, definitely I want to hear about building and nurturing these relationships that you have with your writers, and, how you divide your time between the new guys and the people who you already have on your list, and people who have already won awards, for example, because they might need to be treated with kid gloves and so on. But yeah, maybe something a little bit about your life.
Okay, that's a lot to remember, firstly, so I'm not sure I'll cover it all in one go. I'll start at the beginning.
Sure.
For me and for everyone in publishing, all of us, I think, and I love my job, which is the nuts and bolts of managing an author's career, and it's essentially it's managing copyright and managing intellectual property in what someone has written. And the most exciting moment for any agent, publisher, editor, literary, anyone really, is the moment where you read something no one else has read before, you hope they haven't, and it speaks to you, and a very simple phrase which is incredibly complicated to explain, but for me it's all about the voice, and me trusting the authorial voice, the narrative voice, and it's a very hard thing to achieve. And I do read a lot of submissions every week, probably 50 or 60, and it's and I can't give a huge amount of time to each one, but if something catches me, and I know that I can trust the narrative voice on the page, I know that writer has achieved something already that means that they are, that they are someone I would probably want to work with. What that means, practically speaking, is I would hope they'd want to work with me. We'd talk about being taken on. I would then edit the manuscript, and I would want to sell it to a UK, US, English language publishers, and then I'd want to sell it to every territory in the world. And I think the most deals, well, apart from Harry Potter, the most deals I've ever done for a book is 26 translation deals. There are no books that have sold in 45 different territories, and that's my ambition for my authors, hopefully. My list is predominantly literary, fiction and non-fiction, but more fiction than non. And I have a lot of Irish authors, and I have a lot of short story writers, which is unusual, but something I'm proud of. I learned the art of writing a fantastic short story from some fantastic writers, Anne Enright, Richard Ford, Bernard McClaverty, Claire Boylan, people I worked with in my early career, and Donna Tartt, in fact, and from seeing how they worked, I learned to recognise people who I knew showed similar signs of expertise. So, for example, Kevin Barry, Philippa Kelly, Colin Barrett, Wendy Erskine, all are short story writers who I took on for their short stories, Danielle McLaughlin. The idea being that their writing will grow, and as with Kevin Barry, he won the EU Literature Prize in, I think it was 2012. I need to check my records, but with his novel City of Bohan. So he wrote a collection of short stories and then he wrote a novel, which is just amazing, and then was awarded this prize, which means it's been translated or sold into 15 territories, which is just, you know, it's reached places where I wouldn't have expected it to reach, and that's the power of prizes, which is great. Sorry, what was the next part of your question?
So I was asking you also about, I mean, once you found this voice, and then the building and the nurturing of this relationship so that they don't move away somewhere else and they stay with you once, you know, they become successful, especially.
So we, you know, once the relationship with a UK and English language publisher is established, then it's a point of sharing of talking to as many people in the publishing world as possible. And for me, the importance, when I set up my own agency in 2006, the reason for that was so that I could personally go to the book fairs and lots of festivals. I was lucky enough to be in Jaipur in 2009, for example, and I've been to Frankfurt and London Book Fair every year since 2006. And it is the opportunity to talk to editors from around the world about my authors and to try and persuade them and convince them that firstly they should read them, secondly they should publish them. I am aware, I mean, I do handle a couple of writers in translation into the UK, and it is the difficulty of the cost of translation is obviously a consideration for any publisher looking to bring in a writer of a different language. So that it forms quite a lot of the conversations that I have with foreign editors, with my the authors of mine who are Irish. There's a very good fund that someone else was talking about, different catalogues and funds that are set up by specific countries, and the Irish Literature Exchange has been incredibly supportive of Irish writing and publicising that at all the book fairs to foreign editors, and you know, I think they do a fantastic job of making it possible for Irish writers to be translated in countries and territories where the cost of translation might be prohibitive. I've recently noticed a similar thing with Douglas Stewart and Shuggie Bain, which obviously has benefited from winning the Booker Prize, and has been selling brilliantly in its English language edition throughout India, I know, but it's also had support from the Scottish funding for some of the translations. It's started coming out in all the different countries now and is doing very well, I'm glad to say. And that's a very particular, it's a story about Scotland, about a particular time in Glasgow, about a particular boy's experience, which is not an easy experience, and the fact that travels and touches people in so many ways is just a real testament to how what Selja, what you were talking about how when literature travels, people can experience other experiences that kind of mirror their own or widen their own experiences. I've probably used experience too much. How I keep my authors is because I am dedicated to them, and I want them to achieve world domination mostly, only not in a military way, but because I feel they have huge talent and are and I just want to achieve as much as possible for them and their literary careers, and I don't take an author on lightly. I do now have because I've been building a list for 15 years, God. So I do have a lot of authors who are at different stages of their career. I have a lot of prize-winning authors, which I'm very grateful for, and I have a number of authors who are at the beginnings of their career. And essentially, it's about juggling different needs and being able to do all the things that an author, I know that I want to, just being very careful and cautious about the authors that I take on and making sure I have the time to do all the things I want to be able to do for them, from editing through to selling rights.
And what's the UK market like? I mean, in the sense that how open is it to foreign authored books and for translations? Because I remember when I used to be going to Frankfurt, we always found it very difficult to sort of crack the UK and the US markets, smaller countries, especially Europe. Different language groups were much more open, we found. What about, specificities, say, of books from this region, South Asia, or from India?
Yeah.
How open?
And it is tough. It's competitive. The problem is that the competition for the literary fiction slots, which is what the majority of a lot of translated fiction, which is coming in, is kind of competing for, is intense. I mean, you've got a lot of UK-based authors who are fighting for those slots, and you've also got a lot of US authors, Canadian authors, Australian authors, and Indian authors writing in throughout the world. The South Asian authors writing in English. You've got a lot of people competing for a part of the market which, in commercial terms, doesn't sell overall very well. Some titles sell particularly well. They're the ones that the publishers are publishing the rest of those literary titles for. Now, I'm all for breadth of publishing, but it does mean that firstly the costs are they have to be looked at with a very, very close eye, because if you're looking to bring in an author who's writing in a different language, you've got the translation costs, obviously, and if you have no help with that, that can double the advance. You've also got the overheads that accompany any publication of any book, so that's a certain amount of money over and above those translation costs. And you have got what any publication in the UK needs, regardless of where the author comes from, is you need a hook. Prizes make a difference. You need a reason for reviewers to review a book. You need booksellers to suddenly take something and start championing it. You need a bit of luck, a lot of luck, and that's where festivals. UK doesn't do festivals as well as everywhere else. I mean, Edinburgh Festival is an exception to that, but actually England is particularly bad on festivals. We don't really have anything like Jaipur at all, but that is a way of introducing authors. Well, I suppose Cheltenham's quite good. We have authors being introduced to their audience. That makes a big difference. It's just trying to get publicity when the author is not local is quite tough as well. But it does work sometimes, and it's very reassuring when it does. I was thinking about Gotcha, which was published by Faber a few years ago. I love that novel, absolutely loved it. And I mean, it didn't sell 20,000 copies, but it did do very well, I think, and it met its expectations.
Yeah, so I hope we've got publishers who are listening in to see what exactly is required now.
I think you need a reason for it to be a necessary title on a list.
Yeah, and what you said about having that hook or having this window through which you sort of let in the other, so that you create that interest, and maybe we can come back to this later, because I don't know if there is a way to predict what is going to work, but maybe we can come back to that after we brought in PHAEDON and the whole range of academic books and journals that he publishes, and what makes an academic book travel, because I would imagine that's a little more specific to the region and probably a little more difficult to go into different languages, but maybe we should hear from him now. PHAEDON, if we can get you in now.
I think
PHAEDON.
book. Yes, hi. Thank you for the invitation.
I'm not.
You cannot hear me.
Sorry, I can't hear.
Now?
Yeah, that's better.
Yes,
Yeah.
sorry about it. Thank you for the invitation. I think academic book is a broad term, let's say non-fiction books. And I think it is, as a sector, it is changing rapidly. and the recent COVID crisis is accelerating that change. So I don't know, 5 years from now, it seems to me that academic publishers are more becoming providers of content. And for example, journals, very few are printed. So the whole sector is changing completely. The content is provided through platforms, etc. But when we say non-fiction, sometimes we have non-literature books that are not necessarily about education. It can be books about history of ideas. It can be books on social sciences. And I think some of these titles may travel. And we have seen it happening in other languages. For example, a book written in Greek about the Weimar Republic is not, it is a book that can travel to all democracies. It has an interest. There is a hook there. And there are many other examples like this. But apart from, the non-fiction sector, I want to say a few things about small languages by experience, how we can export. And I think it helps a lot to have a consistent national strategy. For example, some small languages, some small countries have done better than others. It's very important, all this translation support, all these grants. In my opinion, they work, and they work well. Participation in book fairs, it works well. We all meet in Frankfurt. You always buy or sell something in Frankfurt. Even if you are a very small language, like, for example, the Greek language, just 10 million people globally. Prices, they do help. We need to have more prices and reinforce them. How on earth would I, a Greek publisher, know about a Finnish author? Now, because of the European Union prize, literature, I can, I'm curious to find out more. And I think what Renate said, develop translators for small languages are the best agents for us. So, and it's very difficult to have direct translator. Imagine from Hungarian into Flemish. So I think you need to have a long-term strategy, how to educate them, help them, and create pairs in every language. And then you have to focus on certain authors and certain books to create national champions. For example, if you like Marquez, you will go to all Colombian authors. If you like Nesbo, you will try to find, this is how you create trends. For example, I've read the books of Khaled Hosseini. I had no familiarity with the Afghanistan or Afghani culture. Now I am more curious as a reader. And then regarding agents, we should motivate them, because for an agent, it is much easier to sell an English, a French, or a German author to, let's say, Indonesia. But they have no motivation. It's quite difficult to sell small languages authors. And I think if we, as publishers, package ourselves like small languages can offer different windows, it's something fresh, it adds to variety, try to market ourselves better. And that's about it. First comments.
Yeah. So what do you, like you said, you go to Frankfurt and you go to other places and you do sell and you do buy. So what are the kind of things that you would buy? And if you would, especially if there's something from our region, then maybe you'd like to mention that. Is there anything?
For example, from your region, I think literature would be, it's not my area. I'm not an expert on this, but I think it would sell well. I mean, knowing the reading habits of, for example, the Greek audience, people would be curious. People would be curious. And there have been examples like this. Now, non-fiction is more challenging.
Yeah, definitely.
That's why I talked about national champions. If you have one author that does a success, then others follow. There are small countries that have done really well going internationally. But even big language, the other way around. I think it really helps to have to open the window. You know, once you open the window, you can build on this.
Thank you. I think we don't really have much time, and we have some questions coming in. So I'll ask a couple of those first. Kashish Lewis is asking, do you think that translation may disrupt the authenticity of a writer's voice or work? How do you manage to keep the originality whilst translating it to suit people of a particular language? So maybe one of you could take that. Renate, would you like to take that?
Yes, that's always a question, and I know that also for supporting bodies, it's a question that they want to give money only to the high quality translations. And I've already mentioned that for the author, the proper translation can help to bring him into the market, and it could totally spoil the adventure and totally spoil an interest even to shut this window PHAEDON was mentioning. And so, of course, we as a publishers try, there is a clause in each copyright agreement that the publisher who buys the rights has an obligation to follow up that the translation should be done properly. And those publishers who really care about work and love the books they publish, I'm sure, at least in our country, it is true that we try to work with the translators whom we can rely, and it's important. One thing is interesting actually, that the translator he or she needs to know the language is translating from, but actually the main challenge sometimes is the knowledge, the command of the native tongue.
But I think this
because really it needs to be literary, but not a literal translation. And so, yeah, there is editor, there is a proofreader, there are sometimes some readers who evaluate the translation, and also for providing the grants. There in some countries, the publisher applying has to submit a sample translation, and this sample translation is evaluated anonymously by somebody else who knows the language. And then only I for instance was evaluating a translation from Korean into Latvian, and sadly it was not good enough, and I had don't give the grant to them. And so it happens, and I think we should cooperate, but we should also remember that only good books can keep people reading, and a good language.
So also that, is it that you decide what to keep in the book and what to take out from the book because it might be sensitive or something? Does that happen? Would somebody like to take that just a little further?
Well, I think it should be anyway. Also, there is a clause in the copyright contracts that you can't omit anything or change anything without written consent of the copyright holder. So in some contracts, there, especially with non-fiction, where there could be some localization, then it's permitted. But I think this line between amending something, making something better, and censorship is quite thin, and we should be very, very careful.
Yeah. So I think we are at the end of our time, and I still had many, many more questions. And like I said right in the beginning, if we were all to be in Jaipur at this time, we could have stepped out and talked a little more about all of these really interesting issues that have come out as a result of this conversation, because there's a lot that I could have listened to from you, and I'm sure the audience could have as well. But I'd like to say thank you very much to each one of you, Claudia, Lucy, Renate, and SELJA and PHAEDON for being such engaging speakers, informative and interesting. And I'm sorry I had to hurry you up and sort of shut you into these 5-7 minutes or whatever we had. Thank you to JLF and Bookmark and the Cultural Relations platform as well for giving me this opportunity to meet all of you and listen to all of you. And I'm definitely looking for Celia's books for sure right away. Thank you.
Thank you, Claudia, Lucy, PHAEDON, RENATE, SELJA, and URPU for this insightful and invigorating session. Thank you, Preeti, for leading such a fabulous conversation. And a big thank you to all of you for being a wonderful and attentive audience. This session was organized by Cultural Relations Platform, CRP, an EU-funded project in collaboration with Jaipur Bookmark. All our sessions will be available to view later on our Facebook page and YouTube channel. Once again, we would like to thank all our advisors and partners for generously supporting us. We hope you all enjoyed this conversation and will stay tuned for the next session. The politics of locations, or how to upset the status quo of who gets to publish what and from where. Gayatri Chakravarti, Spivak, Leonara Miano in conversation with Naveen Kishore. Thank you once again, and now we present an interesting reading from the JBM short series.
Hello and welcome to the 2021 edition of Jaipur Bookmark. First of all, big congratulations to Teamwork Arts for their resilience and creative spirit that overcame these extraneous circumstances, versions of which we lived through and are living now, and were able to organize this remarkable event that the publishing industry loves and looks forward to each year. I'm really glad we didn't break stride. In fact, I'm glad we all persevered, strived to survive, learned many lessons, and came out on the other side stronger, wiser, and better prepared. 2020 was a tumultuous year for all businesses, and publishing was no exception. The pandemic, the lockdown, the introduction of the new normal, it all disrupted our ways of business and our lives. There were no sales for a few weeks at all. Post-lockdown, the footfalls were low in the bookstores, distribution was disrupted, events and new launches had to be cancelled, and many other challenges that we all faced. However, books and reading emerged as a salvation to escape and cope with these strange times. We saw people turn to books, print and digital, for comfort and entertainment, and it became a popular topic in both traditional and social media. At this time, it was important to understand the pulse of the customer and how to keep books relevant and available to our readers. It was extremely crucial to pivot and embrace the power of internet and digital technology very quickly, the two elements that kept us all connected during social distancing and quarantines. And it is really commendable how we all adapted to remain connected with our readers, from local bookstores delivering books using delivery apps, to publishing houses using digital media to engage with consumers with innovative and interactive campaigns, virtual book launches which replaced on-ground events, and the literary communities, they created hangouts for our readers with online discussions and events. So for 2021, our focus should be to move ahead with all the learnings from 2020 in a new direction that keeps books and reading center stage, making the whole experience more inspiring, informing, and entertaining for everybody. Thank you.